The man who shot 50 Cent 9 times never spent a single day in prison, and for 3 years, he was driving Ja Rule's car. Most people think they know this story. The shooting, the beef, the federal case, the life sentence, but there is a chapter that nobody covered completely. The man who actually pulled the trigger on May 24th, 2000. The man who fired 9 bullets into 50 Cent outside his grandmother's house in South Jamaica Queens was never charged for that shooting. Not one day in court, not one day in a cell. He got promoted. By the end of this video, you will know exactly who Rob Lyons is. You will know what he drove, you will know who was paying for it, and you will understand why the man who gave the order died in a Supermax, while the man who carried it out is still walking free today. The shooter. Let me take you back to May 24th, 2000. South Jamaica Queens, early morning. A street rapper named Curtis Jackson, known as 50 Cent, is outside his grandmother's house on Elmhurst Avenue. He is not a superstar yet. He is a rapper with street buzz and a song that had the wrong people paying attention. That song was called Ghetto Quran. 50 Cent recorded Ghetto Quran in early 2000. In that song, he did something that nobody in hip-hop was supposed to do. He named real drug lords by name, real people, still alive, still operating. One of those names was Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Supreme McGriff did not take it as a compliment. Now understand who Supreme McGriff was at this point. He had already done federal time on a continuing criminal enterprise charge, the same charge they use on mob bosses. He came home in 1991. By the late 1990s, he was trying to connect with the music industry, but the streets never let a man like Supreme McGriff fully walk away. When Ghetto Quran started playing in Queens, Supreme McGriff made a decision. He reached out to a man named Robert Lyons, street name Son. Rob Lyons was from Brooklyn. He stayed low. No real arrest record that law enforcement could find. No street reputation that people recognized. But he was trusted, and he was a shooter. On the morning of May 24th, 2000, Supreme McGriff, a man named Chai Milliner, whose street name was Godby, and Rob Lyons drove to Elmhurst Avenue and waited. Here is the detective who investigated this case personally, naming every single man who was outside that house that morning.
Kenneth McGriff, Chauncey Milliner, whose street name was Godby, Rob Lyons, whose street name was Son or Rob Love. They go to 50's grandmother's house and wait for 50, and the rest is history. They shoot him up.
9 shots. 50 Cent was hit in his hand, his leg, his hip, his chest, his face, and 4 more places across his body. He survived, but only barely. Here's what most people do not know about what happened next. According to Detective Bill Courtney, 50 Cent did not even know at first who the real shooter was. He thought it was a man named Hamo. Hamo was connected to those streets, and the timing made sense to 50 in that moment. But 50 was wrong. And here is something else nobody talks about. After the shooting, 50 Cent went to a safe house. He did not go to the police. He did not cooperate with the investigation. He started recording music while his wounds were still healing. The album that almost never got made, Get Rich or Die Trying, was being built while 50 was still recovering from 9 gunshot wounds. That silence almost let Rob Lyons disappear forever. But Rob Lyons did not disappear. He did something that nobody expected. What did he do, and how did the FBI find out about it? Promotion. Rob Lyons shot 50 Cent 9 times on May 24th, 2000. He was never arrested for it. When Detective Bill Courtney first got Rob Lyons' name, he ran it through every system available to law enforcement. What he found stopped him cold. Rob Lyons had no arrest record. Nothing that would come back on a rap sheet. He was a ghost. The only thing the detective could find was a driver's license. But the streets were talking, and the FBI was already listening. Here's where this story goes somewhere that nobody expected. Not long after the shooting, Rob Lyons started showing up on law enforcement radar in a very different way. He was not hiding. He was not laying low in Brooklyn. He was moving around Queens and Manhattan in plain sight. First, he was driving a Hummer. Then he upgraded. Detective Bill Courtney ran the tag on a Mercedes-Benz that Rob Lyons was driving around in. And when that tag came back, it was not registered to Rob Lyons. It was not registered to anyone connected to the streets of Brooklyn or Queens. It was registered to Jeffrey Atkins. That is J. Rule's legal name. The man who fired 9 bullets into 50 Cent was now driving a car registered to 50 Cent's biggest enemy in hip-hop. And it did not stop there. Every surveillance operation the FBI conducted around Murder Inc. records, Rob Lyons was right there, standing next to Ja Rule, riding with Ja Rule, protecting Ja Rule. He had gone from shooter to full-time bodyguard. And nobody on the outside knew his name. Now you need to understand how Murder Inc. was connected to all of this. Supreme McGriff and Irv Gotti, the founder of Murder Inc., had known each other since the early 1990s. Their friendship went back to around 1990 to 1993. That is nearly 10 years before the federal investigation began. And during that time, The connection between Supreme McGriff's street operation and Murder Inc. records had grown deeper than anyone on the outside realized. The FBI discovered that Murder Inc. had a two-way pager account, a shared communication system that multiple people were using. And when federal agents pulled those pager records, they found messages tracking the movements of 50 Cent, where he was, what neighborhood he was in when he was on the street. That pager account belonged to Murder Inc. Records. A music label's communication system was being used to track a rapper who had just been shot 9 times. That is not a coincidence. That is a murder conspiracy operating through a music business. On January 3rd, 2003, federal agents walked into Murder Inc.'s offices at 825 8th Avenue in Manhattan. They seized computers, they seized financial records, they seized documents. The raid was public. The music industry would never be the same. Here's Irv Gotti himself, the man who built Murder Inc. from nothing, describing the exact moment the federal government walked through his doors.
So then the feds come in and start raiding Murder Inc. offices, which are in the Def Jam section.
Yeah, in the Worldwide Plaza.
In the Worldwide Plaza.
A historic building.
Yeah.
I got the feds running up in there.
The feds had a 95% conviction rate, and they had been building this case for years. Irv Gotti and his brother Chris Gotti spent $10 million fighting it. They beat the federal case in 2005, but beating the case did not save Murder Inc. The label was already destroyed. The artist had moved on. The momentum was gone. And while Murder Inc. collapsed around him, Rob Lyons kept driving that Mercedes. So what happened when the federal government finally closed in on the man who gave the order? And what did the verdict mean for everyone who was still walking free? The collapse and the contrast. The trial began in 2006, and the federal government came with everything they had built over years of surveillance, wiretaps, pager intercepts, and witness cooperation. Now here's the teaching moment, because most people hear the word RICO and move past it without understanding what it actually means in a courtroom. RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations. It was originally designed to take down the Italian mafia. What makes it different from every other criminal charge is this: prosecutors do not need to prove you personally committed every crime. They only need to prove you ran the enterprise. Well, if you were at the top, every murder, every drug deal, every illegal transaction that happened inside your organization lands on you. All of it. Every single crime committed by every single person who worked under you becomes your responsibility the moment a jury decides you ran the operation. That is why Supreme McGriff was facing something he could not fight his way out of. The charges were specific: racketeering, murder for hire, homicide conspiracy, narcotics trafficking, engaging in illegal financial transactions with drug proceeds. Each charge carried its own weight. Together, they painted a picture of a man who had been running a criminal empire for over 2 decades. And the government had the pager records, they had the surveillance, they had the cooperators, they had the Mercedes tag, they had everything. On October 2nd, 2007, the jury came back guilty on every major count. The sentencing came shortly after, and the federal judge did not hesitate. Life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Kenneth Supreme McGriff, the man who once ran the streets of South Jamaica Queens, was going to die inside a federal cell. He was sent to USP McCreary in Kentucky, one of the most secure federal facilities in the United States. A supermax where the people inside are considered so dangerous that the federal government cannot place them in a regular prison environment. Now here's what happened to everyone else connected to this story. Irv Gotti beat his federal case in 2005, but Murder Inc. was already gone. The label that had produced some of the biggest songs in hip-hop history could not survive the weight of a federal investigation. All those platinum records, all those #1 hits, all that momentum, destroyed. Ja Rule went from selling millions of records to becoming a cautionary tale. Not because he was convicted of anything, but because his name kept appearing in the same sentences as federal investigations and murder conspiracies. The audience turned away. His career never recovered. And then there is Homo. Homo was the man that 50 Cent initially thought was the shooter on May 24th, 2000. He was wrong about that. But Homo was connected to those streets. And not long after the shooting, Homo was murdered. Killed by a man named Damon Hardy and his crew as part of a separate street conflict. 50 Cent knew, and he put it in a song. In Many Men, one of the most personal records 50 Cent ever released, he said this: "In the Bible it says what goes around comes around. Homo shot me." 3 weeks later, he got shot down. The man 50 initially thought tried to kill him ended up dead, and 50 Cent memorialized it on wax forever. But Rob Lyons, and the man who actually pulled the trigger, never appeared in any of those lyrics, because most people never knew his name. He stayed low, he stayed invisible, and he walked away from all of it completely free. Before I give you my final thoughts, hear this from someone who Supreme McGriff personally raised, speaking directly about the day he heard that sentence.
When you heard of that conviction, what did you think?
I mean, it's a comrade of mine, so it hurt. I mean, you don't want to see nobody in prison, especially for life. He raised me. So I don't want to see him in no jailhouse for life.
Now here is my opinion, and I want you to really sit with this. Rob Lyons fired 9 bullets into 50 Cent on May 24, 2000. He was promoted to bodyguard. He drove a Mercedes registered to Ja Rule. He stood next to Ja Rule during active federal surveillance. And the federal government, with all of its resources and all of its evidence, never charged him for this shooting. Supreme McGriff gave the order. Supreme McGriff got life without parole in a Supermax alongside the world's most dangerous people. The man who pulled the trigger is still out there. That is not just a hip-hop story. That is a story about how the American federal justice system decides who matters and who does not. The government went after the top. They made an example of the man who ran the enterprise. And the man who carried out the order walked away into history like he never existed. On October 2nd, 2007, a federal jury convicted Kenneth Supreme McGriff on racketeering, murder for hire, and narcotics trafficking. And a federal judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole at USP McCreary in Kentucky. The man who gave the order will die in that cell. The man who pulled the trigger has never answered for it in any courtroom anywhere. And that leaves one question I want you to answer in the comments. If Rob Lyons had been arrested and charged the same day Supreme McGriff was convicted, would the story of 50 Cent, Murder Inc., and the streets of South Jamaica Queens have ended differently? Or was Rob Lyons always meant to walk free?